Welcome back to another 5 Fact Friday, where we share 5 fun facts about a specific whiskey or wine topic. Hopefully you're going to learn something. Let's go. If you can't tell, we are talking about Irish whiskey today, not specifically just Redbreast, but Irish whiskey. We are not going to be going over all the basics of Irish whiskey. I'm 95% sure I have another video out there that talks about that, but if not, that one's coming soon, so don't you worry. But we're going to be talking about some myths, some just misconceptions, and other just fun facts about Irish whiskey in general. So without further ado, let's dive right in. My favorite first little fake fact about Irish whiskey that should probably be dissolved because it is a little rude, but it's also pretty funny, is going to be that Irish whiskey, after it was created, that there was a massive decline in any inventing, art, anything like that in Ireland for, I think it was like 300 years or something, someone said. Now, there was a decline, but it was not due to just them making whiskey and being like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing ever, and just getting sloshed on their whiskey. That's not the root cause of it. There were other things going on that caused there to be that decline in inventions and things like that. So yes, the Irish may like to drink, but they didn't just drink themselves into a stupor for 300 years or whatever it was. So going back to the origin and just where whiskey came from in Ireland. So we see that Ireland and Scotland essentially made whiskey around the exact same time. You can argue who made it first, not getting into that right now. But we see that both of them came up with a word for it that was the water of life. For Scotch, it was uiscebh, or for Ireland, it was uiscebh. I'm probably slightly pronouncing that incorrectly, and I apologize if I am. I tried to get that pronunciation down, but never works out the way you want it to. So this word meant water of life, but some of the other translations of it or other phrases that they used to also talk about it was water of life, water of vitality, but also burning water, which I just think is the most comical thing when it comes to naming the spirit. It's like, oh, what is this? Oh yeah, that's burning water. It just makes sense. Also, you have to remember that this was not what they were referring to. They were referring to what just came off the still or came off of their alembic. And at that point, they were trying to make this more medicinal. They were trying to find something to extend life, essentially. And they came up with something that, well, it doesn't extend your life, let's just put it that way. In the world of Irish whiskey, we see that it took off. People just really enjoyed it. It was doing really well. And it got up to around 1,288 distilleries. But there was some things that happened. There were either different taxes that were levied or different legislations that were put in place to make it more difficult. And that dropped all the way down to 246 distilleries. Most of this, again, was due to the legislation that came in and people just not wanting to really be involved with that, not be able to make good products. So people weren't buying it. Lots and lots of issues there. By 1822, there were only 40 still legal distilleries. There were a couple of others, obviously, that were illegally running, probably more than a couple. But for legal ones, we know that there are about 40 left. By 1823, that tax and all of those legislations were removed, so the idea was that people should be coming back, but unfortunately the church decided to label whiskey as a demon drink. Clearly, this did not help with people wanting to drink whiskey, so people were definitely stepping away from it, led to a further decline, and again, Irish whiskey was on decline. At this point, Irish whiskey wasn't doing super well, but there were some innovations that started to come about that could have helped them a little bit more. One of those being the coffee still or continuous still being patented and not really being adopted by Scotland, or excuse me, not being adopted by Ireland, but Scotland actually taking it, running with it. And then for them, for some of their spirits, being able to produce it on the column, just being able to export those things and make some good Scotch still. In addition, Scotch just started to take off and it was more widely known around the world, which made it so Ireland really was behind the 8 ball when it came to getting this stuff out. Even now, if you go up to someone and go, oh, would you like some whiskey? They're probably thinking Scotch, bourbon, and maybe rye. Irish whiskey doesn't really come into their mind because Irish whiskey is still kind of trying to fight its way back onto the scene. Now, if you go to Ireland, obviously you're going to find these distilleries are still up and running and they are doing pretty well, just not as worldly wide renowned as some of these other bigger styles. Now, last thing I'm going to talk about is just the namesake that you're going to find for honestly Scotches, but also for a lot of Irish whiskeys. In my mind, when I hear someone has a name on the label and I'm like, okay, that person must have made this whiskey, Not necessarily true. For a lot of these, say Jameson or Powers or something like that, a lot of those are namesake, and it was usually like the grandchildren or the great-grandchildren who were honoring their great-grandfather, grandfather, or father who got the distillery going but didn't have that as the name, which I just think is a really cool thing. It kind of speaks to the culture, it speaks to the history of Scotland as well as Ireland, because that's mainly where you see this. Yes, there are some companies in the US that do this, but typically we have more fanciful names here, or maybe just a certain bottle is named after someone important, but it's not someone who is near and dear to the family, like, say, Jameson or some of these other brands. The world of Irish whiskey is super interesting. There's a lot that goes on there, and it can be a little confusing when you start looking at it, but it is a really fun history, and I encourage you guys to look into it if you haven't checked any of that out. Anyways, glad you guys made it to the end of the video. Have a great weekend. Cheers.